I find this headline kind of funny because it's saying Disney is swinging back towards their animated sequels as if to say that they've kind of gotten away from that. But a lot of the criticisms being levied at Disney over the last couple of years is basically their over reliance on just making movies based off of their established IPs, whether it's a sequel, a remake, especially of the live action variety, the reimagining, just pretty much all that other stuff. A lot of people were saying that they want more original content. Yet when Disney produces original content, they're not really doing too well at the box office, which is why Disney's saying that they need to basically hitch their wagon to already established IPs because those are more lucrative for them. It's not exactly a secret that Disney has become increasingly worried about its major IPs' performance in theaters over the last year. It became clear that a change was in order, and today, the company's CEO Bob Iger announced the slate of modifications that is set to remodel the studio's output. He started off by addressing the Marvel issue and the superhero fatigue, and then moved on to reveal how the studio will approach its animated film slate. And I made a video yesterday addressing the whole Marvel issue that they're talking about. He says that he wants to reduce the output in order to try to avoid superhero fatigue, but I maintain that superhero fatigue isn't a thing, and I don't think the studios believe that as well, because if that were the case, then they would stop producing superhero movies. It's essentially just people tired of the movies that they're putting out, and if they want people to watch their movies, then produce better stuff. But that's another thing. You could watch that video if you want to hear more on that, but let's continue with this one right here. Iger revealed that the upcoming year will be a balancing act between the original stories and the sequels. The executive mentioned that the power of Disney sequels, titles like Frozen 2, Toy Story 4, and Finding Dory, all passed the billion-dollar mark when it came to their worldwide box office performance, and suggested the studio wants to put Disney and Pixar back on top. Of course, those movies came out in a different time. Nowadays, though, Disney has lost a lot of favorability amongst general audiences, as recent polls have shown. And if they're going to try to bank on maybe just having sequels enough to bring people back, that's not necessarily a guaranteed bet, as we can see from something like the Mufasa trailer. When that was released, you can see it had such a huge like to dislike ratio on it. Terrible news for Disney, because the previous Lion King movie, I'll say the 3D animated one because it's not a live action movie, that made over $1 billion globally. And they were kind of thinking that this one will be another surefire hit for them, but it looks like it's not really that well received. And it was even so bad that they even had to resort to turning the comments off on the official YouTube video for it. So not a good sign for them, all things considered. So if they were expecting to make a sequel to something, even if it was successful, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to be a hit, because of just the way people perceive Disney in recent months and recent years. Not that there isn't a slate of Disney sequels coming our way. Just this year, fans will flock to theaters to see Inside Out 2, Moana 2, and Mufasa the Lion King. And like I said, that one's not really good news for Disney. At least it's not looking too good for them. Inside Out 2, on the other hand, that's a bit well received, or a better received than the Lion King. But at the same time, not a lot of people are talking about it because it doesn't really have the hype built around it. And it's only just a few months away before it's coming out. However, the fact that Disney will at least pay attention to its original content output is certainly good news. Something that Pixar employees have been advocating for some years. While it's pretty easy to realize that the banking on sequels and remakes is a way of seeing some guaranteed box office returns, Disney and other studios can't ignore the fact that audiences also want to see something new, and that surprises them, which ultimately means that risks have to be taken in order to create new and successful IPs. And from Disney's perspective, the original IPs they've been producing the last couple of years just haven't been landing with audiences. Notably, you got Strange World. When that came out, that was a failure for them. Elemental, that was another failure when that came out last spring. Some people would try to argue that that was profitable because it did have a pretty decent shelf life, but to say that that was profitable would be neglecting any marketing costs, and it also assumed that Disney made money by selling the licensing right to Elemental to itself for its own streaming service. So since Disney's not making any money by basically licensing their own property to themselves, then that's also another failure. And then most notably, you got Disney's Wish, which was supposed to be kind of their big centennial movie, a love letter to all things Disney animation. But not only was that a failure for the studio, but it was an embarrassing failure for them, which is why, even though a lot of people criticize Disney for just having constant sequels and remakes and reimaginings and all that other stuff, those ones do tend to make a little bit more money at the box office because they are more recognizable, which is something that Bob Iger said during this earnings call, that they have to spend less on marketing and other things like that because they don't have to establish the IP to audiences. Audiences are already familiar with it. Of course, audiences could also be getting tired of certain IPs, like it's saying right here when it comes to Toy Story. Every time a new Toy Story sequel is announced, for example, fans start to wonder where else can the franchise take Woody, Tom Hanks, and Buzz, Tim Allen, after so many years. Of course, this does go on to say that a well-done sequel does have the potential to elevate the original movie, but there has to be a balance that's reached, and this is something that Bob Iger has acknowledged. This is from last December, so less than 6 months ago. Bob Iger was saying even though some of their sequels have been successful, they can't just be doing sequels constantly. They need to have that balance between original movies and sequels and remakes and other things like that. Bob Iger admitted that Disney has been making too many sequels, though he made no apologies for it. Iger claimed that some Disney sequels have performed well and are genuinely good films. I don't want to apologize for making sequels, he said during a Q&A at the New York Times Dealbook Conference. Some of them have done extraordinarily well, and they've been good films too. I think there has to be a reason to make it beyond commerce. You have to have a good story, and we have made too many. That doesn't mean we're not going to continue to make them. I just think it's funny that Bob Iger's doing a 180 on what he said less than 6 months ago, where he was saying, yeah, you can have sequels, but you can't just do it for commercial reasons. And now he's saying, yeah, we're making sequels because it's cheaper to market it. So basically they're doing it for commercial reasons. But I think the reason why they're doing this is because kind of partially because the original ones they've been producing haven't been successful, but neither have their sequels in recent years too, because we've seen a lot of their other remakes and other things like that have been failing for them, whether it's the Marvel movies or whether the live action reimaginings and other things like that they've been doing. Those have all been failures for Disney. But one thing is true, those movies with the built-in fan bases do still make more money, even if it is ultimately a failure, because Disney spends so much money in order to produce them. So I think what we're going to see from Disney in the future is them trying to reduce the budgets on some of their movies and trying to just double and triple down on sequels and remakes and other things like that in order to try to hopefully regain a little bit of revenue for the company, because after the last couple of years, they've been losing so much on the box office. I don't think they can handle another couple of years like that. So they're going to try to do something in order to make money back. And that's why they're kind of retreating back to the well and doing what has worked for them in the past. But as we saw from something like Mufasa and the trailer for that, it's not even a guarantee that's going to be successful for them too. So time will only tell. But one thing is for sure, if a movie is good, like genuinely good, then people will show up to see it outside of that hardcore Disney fan base that'll just watch anything that they put out. And that's ultimately what they need in order to be profitable. It's just a matter of whether they have the creatives at the company left over in order to make such good movies. And I don't think there's those people left over at Disney. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest in entertainment news. And if you can, click that like button and share the video because it helps out with the channel. Thank you.